and when I was in London and didn't know many people, I would go to the cinema all the time. And that's when I became obsessed with cinema, actually.
Good morning, everyone. This is today the last conversation here at the Forum Spazio Cinema. And it is really, really a dream come true to have Jane Campion here with us. And I just want to tell you how much her work, her films have meant over all these years. And it is no small feat that all these films, this body of work, is today even more relevant than yesterday. And if I'm not getting overwhelmed by the emotion, I would tell you and Jane something. When her films came out, as you know, critically, it was not always like a honeymoon. Some critics, especially the beginnings, like with Sweetie and so on, they were not exactly nice. So anyway, time has proven right. But what I want to say, and it's a huge thank you to Jane, is that growing up in some parts of the world, let's say southern parts of the world, her cinema was just as liberating for people like me as it was, I imagine, for many, many of you. And to have films that tell you that you don't need to be on one side or the other side of the fence, that there is a different way to live also as a male, different way to imagine relationships with other people without falling into the traps of categories, and doing this through storytelling, craft of filmmaking, and with the generosity of a unique vision. This has been truly liberating and pointing the way to think with your own head, dream your own dreams. This is what I wanted to tell you. This is why it is so important for us to cherish the body of work and the incredible, gentle soul that Jane Campion is. So please, let's give it up for Jane Campion. I leave you in the valiant hands of Marcello Paolillo, a person that I personally love very much and that works with the festival. He's written, back in the day, one of the very first critical essays and books on Jane Campion, and allow me to say thank you all again for being here today and making this a very, very special day. Enjoy the conversation.
Thank you, Jonah. Thank you, Jane, for being here with us. I just wanted to say a couple of words. No director like Jane Campion has the stark ability to fill every single frame with such vivid meaning. Images of fracture, tension, constraint, domination, love and death. The world as a fleeting backdrop for dreams and fears, visions and premonitions, for torn and restless character at times on the verge of madness, poised between their desire for independence and a secret longing for submission. Family as a place of conflict, sex as a weapon, love as a battleground, an illusion that can slowly turn into an exercise of power, and the camera as a tool to undermine the surface of reality and show us its true essence. Author of cinematic milestones, as you all know, as Sweetie, An Angel at My Table, The Piano, The Portrait of a Lady, Holy Smoke, In the Cut, Bright Star, The Top of the Lake, The Power of the Dog. First woman to win a Palme d'Or in Cannes, twice Silver Lion winner in Venice, Academy Award winner for Best Original Screenplay and as Best Director. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give another round of applause to the Locarno Film Festival Pardo Manor Award for outstanding achievement in cinema, Jane Campion. I hope I didn't embarrass you because, first of all, what I would like to know is how comfortable you are with discussing your films and your career. Is this something that you do more with pleasure or with an effort? And the reason why I'm asking is that because you said that for a long time it was difficult for you to accept compliments and that you were kind of grown up with the dogma of being humble.
Look, sometimes it can be really fascinating, and depending the style of the conversation, I think I learn things too, you know, because as the filmmaker, you are sometimes unconscious of your process. It's actually one of the preconditions. You should be a little unconscious. And then sometimes I learn about how other people are affected, because in a way I'm just the one receiving it and I'm working all the time, like serving the vision. And then later I look at it, oh my God, okay, you know, there are many different ways to look at this thing, and I only see some of it.
Let's start from the very beginning. You were born in Wellington, New Zealand, second of 3 children, from Richard, the theatre director and Edith, actress and writer. Mm-hmm. And I believe they were born the very same day, month and year.
Yes, Mummy and Daddy were born on the same day, same year, so they were like twins, very romantic. Yeah. A hard act to follow, you know, like I always say, oh, well, when were you born? When I met guys when I was young.
And I was just curious, I read in many places that your father's family belonged to a religious order called Exclusive Brethren that forbid books, films, and theater. So I was wondering, how did he ended up then to becoming a theater director? Was it, did he have to go against his family to do that, or...?
Yeah, he did have to separate from his family. Dad's dad was a butcher, and he was injured in the First World War, and so not a very well man, and he died early. But because my father left the Plymouth Brethren, he had to eat in the garage. Oh, wow. And then with one of his brothers who also left too. Yeah. Wow. I think he was pretty pleased about it, actually. So.
And then in New Zealand, your parents created a theatre company that traveled around the country. And then they settled in Wellington. And your sister chose early on to study acting in London, but you stayed quite far away from a long time from your parents' job. You declared at one point, I felt it was despicable, the idea of following your parents' paths, so I avoided it for a long time. Was it really...
I think it's like a really difficult thing, and you grow up and you try to find out who you are, or, you know, as if that can be done. But the effort is still made, you know. And it's difficult to define yourself when you're in the shadow of your parents. And so I wanted to pretend like I didn't have parents. So... yeah, I wanted to leave New Zealand and to not have that kind of close inspection, you know, and to go overseas, which many New Zealanders do since we live so far away from everything. And I spent some time in London and then Australia, really where I spent most of my life. Yeah.
What about the school years? In Julie Bertuccelli's documentary, you said that you hated school because you couldn't behave yourself. How was your... What are your memories of the school year? Was it a difficult period?
Yeah, I don't think school really did not suit me. I really liked freedom, and I hated the way, you know, like the army, school is run. It just seems such a disappointment that a teacher stands out the front and opens a textbook and says, you know, now we're going to look at this. I could do this at home, you know. And I felt really rebellious about it.
Many of your short and early films, I think about Girls on Story, but also An Angel at My Table, portrays the frustrations of being teenagers. And it makes me think of a beautiful line from a film from another female director, Sofia Coppola's The Virgin Suicide. And there is the girl at the beginning when, after her first suicide attempt, the doctor stitches her wounds and tells her, "What are you doing here? You're not even old enough to know how bad life gets." To which she replies, "Obviously, doctor, you've never been a 13-year-old girl." So, which I thought was quite beautiful. So I was wondering how hard it was for you, and do you think it is for you to be a 13-year-old girl?
Look, I think it was I think it's difficult. It's one of the most difficult transitions, I think, in my life, going from being a free child to suddenly feeling the burden of hormones and all the strange things it was asking me to feel and do. It felt very contradictory and uncomfortable. And, I do think 14 is one of the most challenging years for young women. And I really feel for them today, growing up in the digital world where there's so much trolling and cruelty. I really like to think that young people get protected by the older people in the community and supported. But this is, it seems like they're in a kind of wilderness, and it's pretty scary.
And then at the university, you decided to study first psychology, and then you got a BA in anthropology. I was wondering how much your cinema was influenced by that, because you said that you were interested in how thoughts affect our behavior, the mythical content that has nothing to do with logic. And when I think about your films, they all seem like a flat-out demonstration that characters think that they're governed by rationality, but in fact they are not.
I don't really know how much it's affected things, but I think the beautiful thing that I learned from studying anthropology was this idea of, unity and diversity and the sort of opposites and the way language works, in fact, with Levi-Strauss and the kind of structure of the brain. And, like every culture in the world has language. It's like it's one of the things that the brain does. And then if you think about it, also they have myths. And, a lot of story is held in, or a lot of myths are held in story, or a lot of meaning of the culture is held within that. And it's sort of like, it was a great opportunity to think about that and to become aware. And also, that every culture is kind of equally complex, that there's no one more superior culture than another, And I think that was a really deep and profound thing to realise quite young.
And then you started your own grand tour to Europe. You came to Italy, you studied art there, you studied also Italian language.
Yes,
there.
Not very well. Io parlo un poco di italiano.
Thank you. And in many of your films, the characters make these trips. Like there is an angel at my table, she goes to Europe. In Portrait of a Lady, there is the grand tour, of course, and she comes to Europe. But also in the piano, there is a trip on the other side of the world, and even Holy Smoke when she goes to India. So how was that formative for you, and how was it important to feel foreigner and to live that experience abroad?
Look, it was wonderful to travel abroad, but I also experienced quite a lot of loneliness being by myself and, away from my mum and dad, who I also really love. And I think the loneliness was also really helpful because it made me, I'm quite a sociable person, in fact, but it made me dig deeper into myself, and it sent me to the cinema for company. And when I was in London and didn't know many people, I would go to the cinema all the time. And that's when I became obsessed with cinema, actually. And I also was very ill a lot as a child, and the same thing happened, like I was very active kid, very good at running, jumping, all that sort of stuff. But having to be in bed for weeks on end, from the age of about 11, every year I seemed to get a collapsed lung or pneumonia or something like that. And I would be in bed alone for 6 weeks, and you start to have to entertain yourself and develop your imagination or Those things I think can have, illness can be very informative, make you very independent and strong in a way.
And then you moved back to Australia. You studied art first. You didn't study cinema at first, but you started doing your own self-made shorts.
I always loved art history. I was really good at recognizing all the different artists. So, you kind of gravitate to what you love. And when I was in London, I also went to Chelsea College of the Arts, just the foundation year, and then I finished, continued to work in Australia, but to be a bit closer to New Zealand. And it was an amazing art school, and really I learnt everything I know about looking and seeing and practice of art making or even filmmaking from those 2 years in Australia. I think I understood that for the first time that looking was actually a language, or seen as a language, and that you need to learn it. You have to learn it and you have to embody it so that you're not having to think about it or worry about it. It feels natural to you to understand how to read a frame, like how to put things within a frame and how they read. And just the whole sense of economy of vision, which is, a fundamental part of the art practice. And also to find who you are within that, like to find out your own self and being. And, what I found out was that I'm a storyteller. I like to tell stories, and I ended up making little films at art school.
You did Tissue, you did Eden. You said that you were totally self-taught. Yeah,
they were pretty bad, I have to say. The best thing I can say about my early films was that I was extremely enthusiastic. And I remember when I made Tissues, it's a Super 8 film, and I did teach myself out of a manual, which anybody can do. But I had bought a projector, and I would go to my friend's place and they say, "What have you been doing?" I said, "I made a film. Do you want to see it? I've got my projector with me." So.
And you said you didn't know what a wide shot was.
That's right. That's true. Maybe you people don't know what a wide shot is either. Basically, a wide shot is like a particular lens, which means that the way that everything looks is very distant, and is, on your iPhones, when you're on 1, 2, or 3, or 0.5, it's your 0.5. That's a wide shot. And I kept thinking, what are they talking about? The screen's all the same size, I just really didn't understand. And then when I realised there was this world of lenses, I got, oh my God, this is so complicated. I will never figure this out. And that's the last time I enjoyed filmmaking,
Yeah, because you in the documentary, you said, it was the beginning of my agony in filmmaking when I realized there were so many choices. Still to this day, I feel exhausted by planning how to cover a scene.
It's absolutely true. And I also talk to other filmmakers about it. How do you work out your coverage? And the coverage means like where you're going to put the camera in a scene, and how you want the scene to unfold through the camera. And it's just such an endless headache, because you want to do the right thing for it, and maybe you've chosen a style, and that's going to at least reduce the options a little bit. But nevertheless, like in my mind and on paper, I draw and I rehearse so many options for the possibility of, how to make this particular scene work best, and then the actors come in and they change everything. And so yeah, that's the headache. Have I done my job well? And basically, what I try and do is just imagine it from every possible point of view within the style I've chosen, and then, close to the day, I go, okay, I'm going to do this one, and then things might change on set, and I go, well, it looks like I'll be doing that one. But I even think about like, what happens if it rains? I have to, imagine the scene now with everyone with umbrellas, or how we're going to manage this. And sometimes it's just, I'm just so stressed because I know there is no other way to do this scene but in beautiful sunshine in the evening. It has to look amazing, like in The Power of the Dog when they are dancing on the top of the hill. And this is the sort of stress that filmmakers experience. And, I say to my production team, we need options for this day and they say, well, there aren't any options. This is your only chance to shoot this scene.
No pressure.
And I can't even think about it because that seems so hopeless. But and then we go and it's perfect, and you go, oh my God, where the gods are with us. And then COVID happens, and the whole film is shut down. So although that wasn't stressful, that was a big rest. But I think that's one of the defining things about filmmaking is like just handling the stresses because there's just so many of them.
And then you decided finally to do a film school, to enter into the Australian Film, Television and Radio School. But you said you didn't really feel that welcome there, and you felt like you were quite alone compared to all the other, especially male directors there, that wanted to do big car scenes and...
they were just kids, boy kids, they arrive at the film school and they get out all the big equipment, because that makes them feel, I don't know, well, I won't go into it. But I was lucky at film school because I did meet very many like-minded people, like about, 6 or 7, 8 people that really influenced me and supported, and a few of them that really supported what I was doing. But the staff themselves, what can we say? It was still a great opportunity. Like, they'd worked in television and they were nature study filmmakers. So really nothing. They didn't go to the cinema. They never went to the cinema. They had no idea what was going on. And we realised that, and we just thought, okay, fine, we'll work at night, And the school was open all night, and there was a whole group of us that went every night and, made our films together and helped each other. And especially the older students I found were, really helped me figure out how to edit Peel, for example.
We'll get to Peel. I was just wondering, what about the Australian new waves of the 70s and 80s? I never saw an interview with you. Did you have any relationship with that? Did you feel attached? Because when you mention director, they're usually either American directors or other kind of director.
Well, I did really love Peter Weir and George Miller, and when Gillian Armstrong made My Brilliant Career, I thought, oh my God, they let women make films. That's incredible. Because up until that point, I really don't think there were, any female directors working contemporaneously to myself. So, and she had been to the film school too, and I thought she did a really good job, so I was really proud of her and happy. But, most of my inspiration came from the films I saw at the festivals, which were European or American. The Australian film scene, for me, was Peter Weir and Fred Skepsey and George Miller. I love Mad Max, It's an incredibly inventive film, yeah.
And then, of course, a lot of critics, especially for your early films, they mentioned David Lynch as a big influence for you.
He was a big influence for me, and he's from art school as well, and it was revelatory to see the originality of his work and how he really allowed himself that freedom to go wherever his subconscious drew him. He feels like a fairy tale work of the subconscious, and it was very exciting to me. And I also love Buñuel. He's kind of for me, he's likes to be a bit silly, He's like a grown-up who's very childish.
But it's interesting because often we associate them also to words like voyeurism and fetishism, and in the way the piano, a lot of people saw that kind of influence there. Also the metal finger at the end and everything. Are these references unconscious to you, or?
I think those ones are unconscious. I definitely know that I'm the product of my time, and everybody who was making films like Jim Jarmusch as well, Spike Lee, people like that were, if I loved their cinema, I took it in somehow. You don't really know how it's going to go out. But I'm sure I'm influenced consciously, unconsciously by all of them, and very grateful to their cinema.
In your film, though, there is only one director that you directly mention in 2 different films, which is Polanski. You do, well, in Holy Smoke, it's just because of the Sharon Tate story, of course, but then in Two Friends, you mentioned it twice with Tess de Duberville, and that's also one of the directors that you mentioned early on. But then in your interviews, you say a lot that you love Paul Thomas Anderson a lot.
Yes, I do.
And Jim Jarmusch. Those are kind of the main references that when you hear your
yeah, no, I think it's really nice to be able to say I also love Justine Triet, Anatomy of a Fall, and Audrey Diwan, The Happening, and Julie Ducournau, Titan. So it's really nice to have so many more women that we can relate to, and of course Vagabond, who's what's her name, Varda, Agnes Varda. Yeah, so I mean, it's hard to make film without loving film, and probably one of my greatest inspirations is actually Coppola. I absolutely love his early cinema. Not so much early, but I guess from The Godfather on. And Conversation and Apocalypse Now. I think when you see a film early in your life, and I saw Apocalypse Now, I was like, oh my God, this is just the most incredible brain and, view of war. It really opened my eyes because, mostly you're going along seeing sort of what the government wants you to think about war, and you realise what chaos it is, what madness it is, and that was so incredibly strong for me.
Speaking of Apocalypse Now, let's go to your early shots, and we'll go to the films. Peel, you said it was your Apocalypse Now in a way.
That's right. It's embarrassing to talk about, but it's a 9-minute film. But the stress of making it put me in hospital. And I was in hospital for asthma complicated with bronchitis because I didn't know how to prepare beforehand. It was like one of the first films I made on 16mm, and it was extremely difficult for me because I didn't, I'd prepare for one day and I'd realise, we're shooting the next day, and then I'd stay up all night, with no sleep whatsoever, and start the next day because, God, I've got to shoot something. And in this manner, I got myself into hospital, but I finished the film. And it was a real painful lesson because I thought, God, if this is only a 9-minute film, how can I have a film career? It's like crazy. What if anybody finds out?
And your teacher told you to throw it away.
Look, to be honest, I'm very grateful to that teacher because he saw a very early assembly of it. And, very often the people who've been really cruel to you are very helpful as well. He wasn't being cruel, he was trying to be sensible. But you think, why can't he see what I see, And then the challenge for me was to try and understand, why I can see something in the material that he can't see anything in. And, I reduced the film that was probably at that time about 16 minutes to 9 minutes. So that's quite a cut. And I just worked on it with that issue and that problem. And that's why I call it my Apocalypse Now. It's like I did discover how to edit. I did discover how to be economic with the film making, and that you can put dialogue over the top of people's heads and, the back of the head. And I just remember one student saying to me, what am I going to do? The way the guy says this line is so bad. And she said, oh, yes, but, there's a really beautiful shot of the back of his head. She said, that's a really strong shot. You can put anything there. And I'm like, oh, okay. I know this sounds so basic, but you have to learn sometime, somewhere, these tricks of, well, not tricks, but how to work with material, how to dig in deeply and to start to be able to understand and manipulate it. And really I learned everything about editing, and I think I'm really good at editing. It's one of my, of course, working with a good editor, but working with, you know, finding new possibilities, you know, in what we call the valley of delusion. Oh, let's try this idea, this is going to work. No, you know, let's try this idea, this is going to work. No. So, you know, you have to be a great optimist, but also a great realist. Yeah, so that really, I spent almost a year recovering from that, but you know what, I've only ever had one sick day in my whole career as a filmmaker, because I learnt how to look after myself and, you know, learnt to prepare ahead and to how important sleep is and how important yoga or some sort of practice that helps you deal with stress, really.
What would you say it's your most difficult shooting in terms of feature film? Was that Portrait of a Lady? Was that...
Portrait of a Lady was difficult because it was very long and I had a little baby at the time who I sort of, you know, wanted to be with. The shoot was about 16 weeks for some reason. I think we were travelling through Europe, so it was very long. And in the middle of it, it felt yeah, depressed, weighed down by it. But I also really loved it.
We'll go to that because it's one of my favorites. But Peel, then you ended up winning as best film in Cannes, and you weren't even there to retrieve the award. I read that you didn't pick it up.
No. Pierre Rission, I don't know if you people know him, he was like the guy that discovered me and brought my films to Cannes and really has nurtured my career and supported it. You know, wonderful human who's just a great cinephile. I don't think people are like that, maybe you, but they're rare. And he was very tender with me and never trying to force his opinions and aware how to leave space for an artist, you know. Very unique man, gender blind, just treated me and everybody the same way, or you know, he had also rages about some filmmakers that he didn't like, and it seemed like, I don't know, I never understood. But towards me, he was super kind, and he had brought my films in a group, the shorts, to Cannes in the On-Set and Regard department, and one was in competition. And I think he thought maybe I hadn't won anything or whatever, so that he would take me out for dinner up into the hills. So I wouldn't have to sit through the prize giving and have a, you know, bad experience. So I obviously thought I was taking me to dinner because he knows I haven't won anything. And I thought, oh, that's whatever, okay. And when we got back and we were walking along the Croisette, which is the sort of the pavement beside the sea, I saw a guy from the Edinburgh Film Festival, and he said, "Hey, you won the best short film." And I, oh no, I didn't, you know. He said, "Yes, you did, and there was some Australian woman that got up and got it for you." And so that's how it kind of happened, yeah.
And at that time, I heard that Gilles Jacob told the Australian Film Commission to give you a lot of money for your feature film so that you could go back to Cannes after 2 years. You went back after 3 years with Sweetie.
Yes, well, they didn't listen to him. And they did say, oh, yes, come back with your feature film idea. And I did, and it was Sweetie. And they went, this is ridiculous. This is a terrible film. We don't want to fund it. We can't see the point. No one will like it. In some ways, they were right. Many people found it hard to understand. So weirdly, the funding for that film came from just some guys that were in the industry trying to avoid tax, had no interest in my cinema whatsoever. And I was sent to Melbourne to meet them. They said, hello, we believe this is supposed to be a comedy. What's funny about it? We can't see anything funny. And I said, oh, well, we can't really explain humour. And then they said, so what is it? We haven't got the time to read it, you know. So I started off trying to explain it, and then I saw them looking very glazed-eyed, so I just said, and that's it, you know, and they were so grateful that it was like, you know, a 2-minute version of the story. And then they said, listen, we've got some people coming in to show us office chairs. Would you like to help us choose some? I thought, oh, well, okay. So we all, 3 of us, got up and we tried the chairs. I think this is a good one, you know. Moving around, and then one of them brought the other one out of the room, and I was still busy trying the chairs, you know. And he came back and he said, oh, we've decided to fund your film. And I said, really? I said, but you haven't even read it. And he said, it doesn't matter. We like you. we want to do it, you know. And and so I guess I tell this story because it is so interesting about how funding finally does happen. It's often not at all where you expected it. People make these decisions, you know, if they weigh them up too carefully, no one would ever fund a feature film. So people like these 2 dudes just seem to do it like just for the fun of it, just for the heck of it. I mean, it was only $1 million. I guess $1 million is a lot, though. Yeah.
The film was not well received in Cannes. An Italian critic wrote...
Well, hang on a second.
No, but this is... I'm getting there. An Italian critic wrote, and I thought it was pretty nice, as the end credits were running, we festival critics were puzzled and torn by a doubt. Either this was the hoax of the century or a pure, uncut gem that revealed a new incredible talent. I went for the latter option, but many hated it. So how did you deal with the reaction in Cannes?
Well, let me just say that Vincent Canby from the New York Times loved the film. And I'm a bit of a snob, so that mattered to me. And I did realise that it was a little bit like people were booing, that was true, and people were cheering, and that was true. And it was very uncomfortable because when you're a young filmmaker, you just, you know, you make a short film, everyone goes, yay, it's fantastic. And there's no real critical comment, you know. So this was the first time, and it was very hard for me. As I think also, you know, as, I know this is going to sound bad, but as a woman, you're not used to the rough and tumble of, like, rough feedback. And I honestly think if I wasn't already in pre-production on An Angel at My Table, I might have given up then, like, I didn't like these people being mean to me, you know. But I think the experience of having a film that some people really hated was painful. But at the same time, you know, I have ended up having a long career, and my mantra has been like, I'm just going to keep going. You know, if someone's going to fund me and I've got an idea I want to do, I'll keep going. And at a certain point in my career, I've sort of outlasted my critics. They go like, her again, you know? Like, oh no, crusher, you know? And then finally they go, her again? That's amazing.
But I think
She's
it's
still
also
going.
because the film breaks so many rules. I mean, even the title, the cover of the title comes after 30 minutes. So both in terms of the narrative and also about the framing, you break so many rules. And so could that be also one of the reasons why? I guess, did you do it intentionally or?
Look, when you have you make your first film, I think you have a duty to be as much yourself as you can be. And you don't have to, you know, parody the other films. You know, like I love when first films are energetically different. And this was what Sweetie was supposed to be, like a different vision. Definitely my vision, and the cinematographer Sally Bongers and I had been working together at the film school. So we were, you know, 2 young women making our thing. And it honestly looked like people from Mars had come down and made a movie, I think. And I still love it. It's one of my favourite of my films because it feels like it was made without the knowledge of the critics. and feedback or anything like that. And yes, I think when we were writing the film, we realised, oh, what's this character Sweetie doing coming in so late in the story? We thought about it, can we rewrite it, can we fix it? And we thought, no, we can't. It's just going to be an anomaly, you know. And by the end, I think it's fine, you know.
But it's great because she arrives like a tornado and derails the story completely.
Yes, she completely subverts the story, yeah.
There's been a psychoanalytic analysis of your film and your characters. It happened many times in your film. In this case, some critic quoted Lacan and said that Kay represents the neurosis with her phobias and superstitions, while Sweetie, the psychosis, stuck in the house of the tree built by her father, incapable to grow up. What do you think about this interpretation? Do you read them? Do you agree? You don't care? You don't think about that?
I don't really think about it, but I am interested in seeing, I think, Sweetie as a force of the subconscious, you know, like this childlike woman. And her sister who's so paranoid about everything from nature. I like that people want to play with it in that way. But, you know, I don't think for me that's the way you would make work. You know, like I think when artists make work, they work from very different principles than how people might analyse it. So I personally would never analyse a film like that. I would be trying to figure out what the artist was, you know, where they were coming from, why they were doing it, how, you know, yeah.
And Kay has phobia for trees. And trees are a constant haunting presence in all of your films. Of course, in The Piano and Angel on My Table, but even in those films set largely indoors, even in Portrait of a Lady, the only moments in which Isabel can breathe is under the Roman trees. In a metropolis like in The Cut, there are moments in the trees in the park. Even in the desert, in Holy Smoke, there's the tree where they hang the sari. Why trees are so, like visually, what do they mean for you? Why they are so present in all your films?
Don't really know. That's something, maybe you know more about than me. I don't know.
The ending, we see Kay and Louis willing to try again. It reminds of the ending of Holy Smoke and in The Cut, where both couple are all beaten up, battered, and hurt, but they hug each other and there is this embrace in which they try to start again. And this makes me think about a lot of people. Do you consider yourself an optimist? Because all your film had this sort of optimism, but it's a very suffered optimism. We saw The Piano yesterday. It ends with an optimistic note, but there's still this very dark dream at the very end. And even in Portrait of a Lady, you just gave us a freeze frame not to betray probably the novel. It was the only way to make it, try to make a happy ending. So would you consider yourself?
No, I am an optimist. I lead by inspiration, you know, and yeah. I don't think that makes you a philosopher or to be an optimist. But it's just my personality to, you know, as even a child, to get up and want to play, you know, like to have a game, to do something, to think about something. And sometimes I have to rein it in, you know, because things really are not optimistic, or you just have to sit sometimes with a problem, you know, that's bad or difficult, you know, so I have to try to rein my optimism in. And sometimes I get depressed too. It's true.
Let's talk about that ending of Portrait of a Lady. You end with a freeze frame. Was that intentionally since the very beginning? And was it a way not to end like the book when she decides to go back to her husband?
Well, if you look at the book very carefully, what I think happens, maybe you're right, yeah. I looked at the book very carefully at the end, and what I thought Henry James did so well was he canvassed all the relationships he had begun with her and visited them in different ways. Like Ralph was dying, and you know she found her love for him, and they had their love moment. Caspar Goodwood was present. He had been talking to Ralph Touchett, and they were planning maybe that she could escape with him. And yet she had a responsibility to Pansy. who, and the very fact that she had chosen to marry Osmond. So I feel like he wanted to remind us of everything that was there in her life, and that in a way she was now free because she understood what she had done. She understood how she had been tricked by Madame Merle. And there was a way in which, that she was facing her destiny or moving towards it with knowledge. She was no longer a fool,
What I love about the film is one of my favorite, and it's kind of a horror story masked as a period movie, and because it's all about caging and manipulation. But what I find very disturbing and fascinating is that the novel has been interpreted many times as the first novel about human manipulation. But your reading seems even darker. It seems like she sort of wanted to be, in a way, there is kind of a dark aspects of her that she wanted to be submitted and manipulated in a way. Like he is her mirror in a way, her real mirror, not like... So I'm wondering if this reading is right, and this probably doesn't sit too well with some hardcore feminists who wouldn't like this kind of reading of a woman who has this kind of desires also being submitted in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I think, feminism is a complex, subtle place to discuss, women's position and how they have managed it. So I think there's a lot of room for understanding that women are also part of the patriarchy, and this is the form of power in our society. It's a patriarchal society. And within the patriarchal society, some women want to submit. They... and there is, I think... it's complicated, and certainly she made that mistake. I think she saw it was a mistake by the end, that she had thought he was a clever, intriguing, powerful man, and therefore she should submit. And by the time the book is finished, she realised he was a manipulative snake,
And it's also one of your many films about the dangers of love.
Yeah.
And the film, there is Osmond declares to her in a catacomb. I think in the film it's in a salon, but you do it in a catacomb. But when he says "I'm desperately in love with you," then we see this skull on the wall, and then we talk to her. It's love and death.
Yeah,
it's
those words, "I'm desperately in love with you," like that's the romantic dream for the princesses of our world, or the princess inside all of us girls that we were brought up with, that that's what we want. And I don't know, desperately in love. It's a funny word, isn't it? But I think that is, Osmond. Henry James has written a brilliant book, and he understands female psychology so well. All psychology really well. It's hard to think of a woman that could do as well as he did with Isabel Archer, and I love that. The power of the imagination can go anywhere. I can go and, for me to think about a man's psychology, or for a man to think about a woman's psychology. Now I can't remember what you asked.
No, about how there is this kind of equation between love and death. That will come back, of course, in the Cut and in some of your films, like sex and love as a danger, as a risk.
I didn't know, because I sort of think love's just the best thing ever. I think what we're talking about is the dangers of, the romantic love affair, which is a kind of addiction and disease, and yet very attractive. but I don't think it's real love.
Let's go back to the piano, because we skipped that, and we saw that last night. And by the way, it was a phenomenal gift to be able to watch it in the Piazza Grande. I think many of you saw it.
Thank you.
Is it true that one of the inspiration was a painting that your mother had of?
Yeah.
So the woman with this Victorian clothes. Clothing.
Yeah, and here's an example of how my illness has worked for me. I was allowed to stay, to sit in my mother's bed because I had so sick of my own little room. And on the wall there was a painting of Rousseau with a woman in Victorian dress in the middle of the woods. And I remember just looking at that and just being fascinated by what she was doing there. And when it came to thinking about the piano, that was one of the images, I would have been about 9 or 10 then, one of the images that I used to sell the story for the financiers, that little painting by Rousseau. I mean, I think it talks about civilization and nature,
And with the piano, you got to work for the first time with Harvey Keitel. You'll do it also in Holy Smoke. I think that is that film proves how you. I would like to know how you work on your casting, because you make these choices that after the fact they look fantastic, but when you think beforehand, I think everybody would be so surprised at the idea of seeing Harvey Keitel in that role, or even Holly Hunter coming from, she was famous for Broadcast News in that role. But that can be said also for Nicole Kidman in Portrait of a Lady, or Meg Ryan in The Cut. So what makes you click and choose these actors that are not the most obvious choice for the role? Same can be said for Cumberbatch too.
Well, it's such a difficult thing, casting and imagining the people, the actors, and the roles, and you have to do it way before you know the film very well. But like you're casting the film weeks before you start even pre-production. So it's very neurotic making and anxious making, and with the big actors, you don't get to audition them really. So you can only, have a conversation, and like it's scary. It's scary, and you can, it's very obvious to me you can make a big mistake. Yet at the same time, you have to be bold about it, because if you don't, it's not going to be exciting. I think for Harvey Keitel, I had seen him in The Duelist, Ridley Scott's film, and I was really impressed how he played a period character in that film with Keith Carradine. Really amazing. And I thought, he likes to be in art cinema, not only just Scorsese's films, So I was thinking, one of the sad things too is that very often the guy actors don't want to be in films made by women at that time. Now I think things have changed, but that was a reality. But Harvey's actually a feminist, surprisingly. He loves women, and when he heard about this film, he really campaigned to play the role. He loved the character, he loved the story. So that was something I was surprised about. In fact, I had a few male actors to meet in America when we were doing our casting tour, and after I met Harvey, I remember him saying, like almost crying, I want to do this role. And I was feeling so, like, confused. For us New Zealanders, it's a really difficult thing. But then when I was meeting the other actors, I called one of them Harvey, and I thought, oh, okay. I think I've made my decision. And Harvey and I had a really good chat about how it would work, and he made a real beautiful agreement with me, and very gentle and respectful. And, I said, look, you're so experienced and I'm really not, but I still want to be the director, And how's that going to work with us? Like, will will you try what I want you to try? And he says, yes, but maybe let me put this to you first. Like, can I show you what I would like to do? And then if you're not satisfied, ask me anything and I will do my best. I will keep going till you're satisfied. So.
And even the choice of Michael Nyman didn't seem that obvious, because he was mostly famous for his Baroque music for Peter Greenaway. So how did that come about?
Well, I loved his music for Greenaway. It was really amazing. Probably the composer that I most sort of was impressed by, but I sort of was realising that this is piano and the bank of strings that he's famous for, you know, the thrumming sound. Michael's the most incredibly easy to chat to kind of guy, and all he wants to do is watch cricket and go shopping. So, you know, we were going, oh my God, the famous composer's coming to Sydney. You know, we hired a piano for him in a rehearsal space, and he came in and opened it and plonked it a couple of times. And then he said, let's go shopping, you know, Jane. And they wanted to talk about Neighbours. And then finally, at the end of his stay, I said, well, do you think we should talk about the film, you know? And he said, oh, yes. I think, you know, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some research and find some Scottish tunes, and then we're going to work with them as the bass. And I'm, oh, that's a brilliant idea. I love it. Okay, let's do it. But Michael, do you think you could do it differently than you normally do the music, you know, with that dun, 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 you know? And he said, but Jane, that's my signature. And I said, oh, do you think you could sign another way? And, you know, he did it differently. And he did it magnificently, and it was beautiful to hear his music come through. And, you know, I was awfully embarrassed saying that to him, but, you know, you have to somehow find the guts to say what you need to say. At least they can say, well, that's rubbish, I don't want to work with you, you know. But I think as the director, if you have a vision, people respect that, and they want... You know, they know they're only in charge with a small part of the film, and they want to be part of a piece of work that has got a unified vision.
We only have 5 minutes, and I'm so sorry because there's so many things that I'd love to talk to you about, from Wojciech Killer 2, but also the films that you, the most recent ones. But I would like to open up the floor also to some questions here. So if someone wants to say something.
Thank you, Jane, for being here. You cannot even imagine how emotional and inspiring it is to have you so close. My question, I feel like in your movie there's a lot of secrets, a lot of family secrets, a lot of subconscious secrets, and I was wondering if you could share with this very intimate Locarno Film Festival film a secret.
No.
I tried.
No, I mean, I think that I'm actually not a very good secret keeper. Just talking of secrets, it's you know, like secrets, they're almost... It's so confusing to know things and not share them, you know? But sometimes you have to keep them for reasons to protect people. Or myself. And, you know, I think the thing about secrets is to... yeah. That they have a secret, an energy. I'll tell you one thing about a secret, okay, that when we were doing Power of the Dog, Kirsten and Cody, who played the mother and son, you know, Kirsten is a great joker and teaser, and she said to me, oh, Jane, you know, we have a big secret between us, and, you know, maybe I'll tell you what it is. And I'm like, okay. And she told me that her and Cody had decided that she knew that Cody had killed her husband, the first husband. And I was like, really? okay, if it works for you guys, you know. And I could see how that power of that secret kept a connection between them, even though obviously it wasn't true. It wasn't true in the story. And yet sometimes for actors, for them to have a secret gives them this energy that can be very helpful. So if you find a good secret, like I think, you know, Kirsten found with Cody, it you know, is maybe stronger than the sort of, you know, so-called positive secrets that they could have had.
Hi, Jane. George from Letterboxd. I want to just read you a review from one of our members on our platform and ask a question based on that. So Kyle described the piano as sensual, brutal, forlorn, and dripping wet. The piano thrums at Campion's fierce rhythm, improbable and immediately timeless. And then in brackets, Holly should have fingered the butt. So I wanted to ask you about that in particular. There's a beautiful scene where Ada is stroking Sam Neill, Alistair's butt. And it's a moment of real surprising and interesting male vulnerability. Is that something you're interested in portraying throughout your films? And do you think, on reflection, it could have gone further in that scene?
Well, no, I didn't think about that. Fingering the butt, no. But I think it went quite far. I mean, Sam was struggling, as it was. And I think it wasn't really the point for it to become like, you know, invasive maybe for the actor, or apparently. It was more that she felt agency to be the person that was doing the sensual exploring. That was my point. And even with Harvey, like, he found that so disturbing, just as a normal guy, when Holly was trying to, you know, taking the lead and being the one to kiss. He said, I'm feeling like an object. Jane, something was wrong here. I'm feeling like an object. I know. Yeah.
Just time for one last question over there.
I have to say, I think the guy wrote pretty funny in the review.
How do you feel being a pioneer for many other female directors, opening doors with your works?
Well, if I helped anybody at all, that's fantastic. And, you know, in the same way that other filmmakers opened doors for me, totally, my whole career is based on the love of cinema I developed through amazing films I've watched. I was lucky to grow up through the 70s when it was extraordinary. And there was so much strength in the art cinema space. And, you know, I feel I can't take much credit for it because these women have got their own energy. They're coming up. They want to do their thing and share it in a vein, just like, you know, Gillian Armstrong was for me, like, oh, you can do it, you know. Then I'm super happy. And for me, like, seeing people like Justine Triet, Audrey Diwan, Julia Durkanau, Chloe Zhao, Greta Gerwig come in and, like, just be so strong, winning the prizes. I mean, no longer like, oh, we've got a few directors in competition. No, they're winning, you know. It's fearsome and it's fantastic, and it's like the old days of feeling like, you know, yes, women can make films, but not good ones, you know. That's gone, and I'm really so grateful for that. That always felt like a real, you know, nasty trap, just to be sort of in some gutter somewhere as the, you know, token female filmmaker.
So. I would just like to end. The other day you said something beautiful, that in order to be creative, enthusiasm must be stronger than your fear. I would just like to know, how do you cope with fear, and is there any project right now that it makes you more enthusiastic than fearful, and so that you might want to jump on and be your next project?
Well, I wouldn't share about what my new ideas are because they're so crazy, but but I am right now doing a pop-up film school, which is free in New Zealand, and that's a really fun thing to do. And I hope there'll be more of that happening around the world, different places that the students don't have to pay for the tuition. I am working for free, and just they also get paid to come because I really love the idea of a more equal society. I guess I'm a socialist, really. And I grew up like that, in that belief in, a world that has opportunity for everybody, and, not just inherited wealth. And so and also because this is what I received, it was the greatest gift, from the Gough Whitlam government in Australia. It was the time of enlightenment where education was free. And when we were at film school, we were paid a little stipend to go, and we were given, thousands of dollars to make our movies. And I know I would never have had this career without that opportunity. So I can understand how important it is for young people to be given faith and trust and some money, opportunity to be together and make stuff. And so that's a project like, am I a teacher? I don't know, let's see, But I'm very enthusiastic for the idea. I managed to convince Netflix to pay for it. And I'm super grateful that they did, and so is everybody who's involved with it, because I think we have made a little community, and it feels so positive. I just, wish there was more of it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcello. Thank you, everybody.